Assalamu alaikum. It's 8:30. We're live from the studios of British Muslim TV here in Wakefield with this week's edition of Questions with me, of course, Mohammed Shafiq. We broadcast in Sky Channel 752 and across social media at British Muslim TV. Wherever you are around the world, a very warm welcome. We want you to comment on the big stories we're covering tonight. You can call us now on 01924 231 083. Messages on the WhatsApp number, which is on the screen now. And if you're watching on Facebook Live, post your comments on there and I'll share some of them on air throughout the programme. Now, shortly we'll be talking to the journalist Samia Kiyani about BAME and Muslim representation in the media. Then we're joined by Moustafa Bayoumi. He's the Guardian columnist and professor of English at the Brooklyn College in New York, about 9/11 in the Muslim world, addressing issues of racism and Islamophobia. And we finish off in Bolton with the Paralympic gold medalist. Yes, how proud moment is this? Ayaz Bhuta, who won a gold medal in the wheelchair rugby, I think it was. Anyway, yes. He won a gold medal in the Tokyo Paralympics in the wheelchair rugby. He's from Bolton. He's an inspiration, and we'll get really to talk to him about his amazing journey. What a proud moment, not just for him, but I think for the British Muslim community to see the success in the Paralympics. The questions for tonight we're covering here on British Muslim TV. How can the media be improved when it comes to representation of Muslim and minority communities? What impact did the war on terror after September 11th have on Muslims around the world? And how can we celebrate the Paralympians after their magnificent achievement in Tokyo? Please share your thoughts on 01924 231 083 or messages on WhatsApp or post on social media, and I'll read some of the comments throughout the rest of the program. Now let's start with our first story. For the media to actually articulate and reflect the community it serves, it's got to be representative. You've got to be able to see the diversity of our community and our country and our nation represented on the screen, something which we here at British Muslim TV often work towards and try to achieve. But we know it's not representative. We know that when ethnic minorities and British Muslims break into the mainstream media, it is very difficult to get opportunities. Now, what does the media need to do to be more representative, and how can communities help shine a light on that change? Now, Samia Kiyani is an experienced broadcaster and journalist who's worked on various programs like TFI Fridays, Big Breakfast, and then Gordon Brown, the Prime Minister, appointed her to lead the campaign to review race equality legislation in the UK. And as a direct result of that, we saw changes in UK equality legislation, the Equality Act of 2010. I'm pleased to say Samia is joining us live on British Muslim TV from London. Samia, a very warm welcome to the programme. Are you there, Samia? I can see you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear each other now. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the programme. Great to have you on.
Thank you so much. Few glitches, technical, but no, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to speak to you this evening.
Samia, you think after 18 months of the pandemic, we would be experts at that mute button? Clearly, we're not, are we?
No, there's always some gremlins. I just blame it on the gremlins. It's never me. I'm joking.
Tell us, how have you and your family coped during this pandemic? I ask since the start of the pandemic, this is something which I've been asking all my guests. How has it been for you and your family?
I think it was quite challenging at the beginning because when you all live separately and you can't visit each other, and particularly you have to be mindful of older people in your family, parents and so on, that was quite challenging. I'm not going to lie. It got me down at certain times, but I had to be resilient. I had to get preoccupied and not let things get me down. Be in communication with family, be talking like this on screen, over the phone, and just staying connected. That helped us get through.
Now tell us, where did the interest in wanting to be in the media come from?
So this is, so my background is fashion. I actually started off in the fashion industry, but when I was around 13, I secretly harbored desires to be a journalist, but I just didn't think it was for me. Coming from a Pakistani background, having been raised in a community, and at that time, growing up in Manchester, I'm originally from Manchester.
The best city in the world, I would argue.
Totally, yeah, we're brethren. Right?
We are indeed.
So it just, you know, the way the community reflected on what youngsters should do, I think that still is persistent. For example, you know, the acceptable careers were being in law, being in media, being in medicine. So for me to have these dreams and ambitions about being in media, being in journalism, it just didn't seem like a possibility for me. So I just continued with my studies and so on. But, you know, life took me that way. I ended up in the arts. I'm a very creative person. And eventually I found actually, TV found me, the media industry found me. I didn't find it. I was working in a fashion, big top fashion house, Topshop. Most people would have heard of it, Top Man. I got made redundant because I was the youngest, first out. A friend of mine was working at Sky, called me up and said, I've heard you lost your job. Are you okay? Do you want to be a runner? They've got a position for a runner at Sky TV. And I was like, what's a runner?
What's a runner, yeah. For those watching who not aware of what a media jargon, what is a runner?
A runner is the gopher. It's the person who's the most junior member of a production, of a TV company, of a channel. And this person runs around, literally, that's why they call the runner, to make cups of tea, to print scripts, to go get lunch for everybody, or to go get the guests. A runner is somebody who's got their trainers on and runs around doing all the menial but very important jobs.
Yeah. Very important people. And many people start off as runners and then go on to be very successful producers, directors and presenters. And so it's kind of the first step in your media life. But yeah, that's really interesting. And then that transition, you arrive at Sky. Tell us about that. How was that for you?
Well, it was just awesome. I was just blown away by the whole production process. I got to see firsthand something that I always dreamed of. And it was seeing people, a whole team come together. Everybody had their little things they had to do. Everybody had their responsibility. I loved the camaraderie. I loved the cohesion. I loved the fact that everybody was highly organized and in communication. And I'm naturally a very organized person and great at communication. So it was a really natural fit for me. And the person who was in charge, the floor manager, that's the person who looks after the studio and looks after the timekeeping to make sure, for example, a live show like yours doesn't fall off air or not go on air on time. You know, this gentleman, he took me for lunch at the end of my week's tenure. I was only there for a week, and said, look, I really see something in you. You're very organized. I like that. You're really on the ball. And he offered to train me, and that's how I got my into the business.
And then you get yourself in, and then you get a taste of the media. Now, everybody I know who works in the media, whether on screen, behind screen, feels as if as soon as you get that taste of the media, you don't want to leave it. You get inspired to get more involved. Was that similar in your journey as well?
To begin with, I've had different reasons over the years, but to begin with, it was really about really seeing how a production comes together. I mean, it blew my mind. I was just like, wow, this is awesome. And being of the nature I am, I was a perfect fit for that kind of environment. Over the years, I developed my career. I went from a floor manager and first assistant director onto production, producing, and journalism, broadcast journalism, presenting like your good self. And what I've discovered for myself is I love the creativity of our business. I love storytelling. Storytelling is where it's at for our whole business. Our business exists on storytelling, whether it's me sharing my story here with you, whether it's news, whether it's on the big screen, you know, in a film, or on TV in a drama or a series. And content production. I'm obsessed with content production now, whether that's for TV screens, documentaries, programs, live shows, or otherwise, but also content production to make a difference. And I've I'm producing 2 shows at the moment, which I've launched on YouTube recently, one on careers in media and the other one about diversity in media.
Yeah, really powerful things. And obviously when they're ready, we'll happily share them.
They're ready, Mohammed. They're ready. I'll be happy for you to share them.
Okay, excellent. Well, I promise to share them on my social media as well. Just tell us, what other things have you noticed? I mean, when you look around, particularly in my career, when I've started in the media, you look around and you look at the mainstream media. When I started appearing on it, it was very white, it was very male, it was very middle class. What other things did you notice that made you feel as if you didn't feel it was represented?
Well, Mohammed, I have to tell you, when I started some 27 years ago, what you're describing right now, that was pervasive back then. So whilst things have changed somewhat and they must be acknowledged and welcomed and applauded, the same discussions are going on to this very day, which I find rather sad. 30 years almost has passed, and here we are having the conversation about diversity still. So some of those barriers are still in place, as you've just very articulately shared with everyone. Now, some of the other issues are the structures of the whole environment, the structures around recruitment, whether that's at entry level or otherwise. There's, as you know, the industry is very strong freelance community, and also mid-level careers. There's a glass ceiling at mid-level careers for people from diverse heritage, and that has to be addressed. And retention, promotion. So these are kind of hurdles that are stumbling blocks that need to be addressed. And to be fair, they are being addressed by certain broadcasters, but that isn't happening fast enough, in my opinion. They need to step that up.
After 9/11, there was an added focus on Muslims in the media. Do you think that sort of negative perception of Muslims that was fed in the media hindered representation? We'll take a break. We'll start with continue the conversation with Samia Kiyani. She's going to stay with us, 01924 231 083, and we'll open the lines as well. Take your calls. Don't go anywhere. After these important messages, we'll be back. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV, live from the studios here in Wakefield.
I think so. I think at the time it was very challenging for Muslims, given what had happened with the whole 9/11 incident. It was a very trying time for Muslim communities. Suddenly, they were the scapegoats for everything. Suddenly, the finger of blame was pointing very directly at Muslim communities. So when you are on the receiving end or having a spotlight put on you around something heinous that's happened, of course, that's going to shift people's perceptions about you and potentially influence their decisions around recruitment, perhaps.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Samina. I know you're going to stay with us for our second part with our exclusive conversation with the broadcaster and journalist Samia Kiyani, who's going to stay with us. We're less than 30 seconds away from our break. Just give you that story coming out of Brighton. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has delivered his first face-to-face speech where he sets out Labour's serious plan for government. Sir Keir Starmer delivering his first speech in person last year, didn't do that because of the pandemic. He set out a serious plan for government. He says he can provide the leadership that the United Kingdom needs. He says he has a plan and the country faces a big moment recovering from the pandemic, and that demands leadership. And he said the Prime Minister doesn't provide that, and he does. And the Labour Party has set out new policies. He believes on mental health, education and housing. But he also was a very highly personal speech because, in a sense, he was introducing himself to the country, and he set out the values of his mother, his father, and the impact of his career as former Director of Public Prosecutions. Will reflect on the party conferences as they go on. Next is the Prime Minister Boris Johnson in Manchester on Wednesday, where he'll deliver his speech. face-to-face with delegates as well. We are taking your calls now on 01924231083, or you can get in touch with us on our social media handle, British Muslim TV. Samia Kiyani is my special guest, is still with us. We were talking about your experiences in the media, the Department of Communities and Local Government, Prime Minister Gordon Brown heading this government. So the government then asking you to lead a project, and you help change equality legislation, which is a significant thing, I would argue. I know you're going to be trying to. I know you're going to try to be humble here, but let's be honest. It's a massive achievement because legislation was changed as a result of your work.
Right. So, Mohammed, let me put things into context. I cannot take the credit for everything. You know, that would just be wrong. There were so many people involved in it, above and beyond what, you know, the minute contribution that I made. So back in 2009, I got recruited to present and produce a series of content for communities and local government under Gordon Brown. He had instructed research into inequalities in the UK. And so I was a part of this. So what we did, my contribution as a part of this team, I wasn't alone, and it was minuscule compared to what communities and local government did and other contributors. We headed up and down the country to 7 regions, interviewing members of the public, the different sectors, MPs, collating information, feedback around inequalities, particularly inequalities impacting people from different backgrounds, including the Muslim communities. All this was fed back, and along with the fuller and greater information that had been collated, not just from us, but from other parties, that was used to update the Equalities Bill into the Equalities Act. That, for me, was significant. That was in 2010, that was introduced, and that has made a big difference to the way diversity is viewed in this country now. Let me just expand on that a little bit. Previously, there was a real blanket approach to how diversity, discrimination, and so on was regarded. After that was put in place, the Act, there was different strands. Everything got broken down a little bit. So things got to be looked at with a bit more scrutiny, whether it was gender, racism, or, you know, anti-Semitism or Islamophobia or whatever that might be. So for me, that was significant. However, laws don't change everything on their own. You can implement as many laws as you want, but you can't enforce them. Let me give you a quick example. In the workplace, if you are on the receiving end of discrimination, exclusion, or feel you've been excluded from being promoted because of the color of your skin, your faith, or whatever that might be, how can you prove that? It's very difficult to prove. So we can't, although it's welcomed, changes in legislation, they do make a difference, and significant difference on many occasions. There needs to be other factors that are involved to progress things. Now, the media organizations are doing that, the media industry is doing that, but as I said earlier, not fast enough. So
yeah, but how long more do we have to wait for? You talk about your career being 30 years. I would probably, 2005 is when I started a period on the media and doing community activities and having sort of an input in the media. And we're still waiting for that change. How long more do we have to wait and give opportunities for these media companies to really bring those lasting changes?
Well, that's a very good question, Mohammed, and let me respond in the best way that I can. So with the death of George Floyd and the increased protests from the Black Lives Matter movement, that has really sped things up. That's really put media, or not just media organizations, all sectors under scrutiny to review their recruitment policies, their internal structures, and so on. Now, I can't talk about the other sectors. I can only talk about my own sector.
Yeah.
Now, what I've seen and how it's occurred for me after all this is a lot of pressure put on media companies. They were suddenly in panic mode. Oh my word, we are being called out. What can we do to address this ASAP? Now, what has happened is many initiatives, many programs have been implemented around getting more people in at entry level from diverse backgrounds. Now, whilst that's good and it's welcomed, it is a short-term solution. For me, the whole industry approach has been a knee-jerk one. It hasn't been very well thought out, very clumsy in its approach.
Yeah. Do you think it's been reactive?
It's been reactive.
To circumstances and events.
Yeah, and I would like to add, what I would like to see, and now that's slowly rolling out, is more long-term solutions, sustained change, transforming the industry. And how can we do that? Great, we've got the work experience. However, once you've had the work experience, you might be from a community where you're not as well connected as your white counterpart or your better educated counterpart. So things have to be fairer. So beyond the experience, giving initial experience in the industry, I advocate for mentorship, which is expanding and increasing, and likewise training. But beyond that, funneling people from different backgrounds to job opportunities and ensuring retention, because as I said earlier, there's a problem at mid-level careers in this industry. You reach a certain level and guess what? Suddenly the opportunities to move higher up the hierarchy into decision-making roles are few and far between. And often the argument, oh, it's got to be done on meritocracy is brandished around. For me, that's a non-argument, because think about it. Someone like me or you or somebody else, 10, 20, 30 years of experience. And what? We can't be reviewed on meritocracy? No, I'm sorry, that doesn't wash. So those structures around recruitment at those high levels need to be reviewed and revised so that we get more people from diverse backgrounds in decision-making roles so that we can properly transform this environment. Otherwise, it's the same old people who do not have the lived experiences of people from different backgrounds making the decisions. How could they possibly know how we can overcome hurdles or actually, they're not even, actually, to be fair, they are listening, but not enough. On my show, I've got 2 shows on YouTube, one about careers, which I'll talk about in a moment, one about diversity. On the diversity one, I created purposefully a platform to make more visible people from different backgrounds, to come on my show, not to lament the problems, no, highlight the problems, come with solutions. Many of them have taken it upon themselves to create initiatives and programs to encourage and support more people from diverse backgrounds into media. Not only that, they are really encouraging and supporting people in decision-making processes to kind of break down those structures and revise things to create a fairer playing field.
Can I just ask you about that?
Yeah.
Some of these platforms have used, some of these media platforms have used their platform, should I say, to stoke up hatred and demonization of Muslims. And then we get a situation where now you've got social media, you've got other ways of getting your news, and people have turned away from the mainstream media. What can we do to reconnect the mainstream media with the Muslim community or ethnic minority communities?
Well, I mean, part of it is down to recruitment and ensuring engagement with the community, providing content for the community that's going to resonate with them. So, for example, if we look at just everything we've got globalization, right? We've got increasing interconnectivity and connectivity. The likes of Amazon, Netflix, Apple, they have got global audiences to which they have to provide content, which is beyond the normal storytelling. And that is where there's an opportunity to be had. And I feel like the British mainstream media is lagging behind the likes of those big organizations, because if what the likes of Netflix are doing, they're really actively going to diverse communities and saying, look, we want your stories. You know why? Bottom line, profit, because they've got a global audience. They have to serve that audience. So what better way to serve the audience but to actually get people with lived experiences as writers, as producers, as directors to showcase those stories and address the needs not only of those direct communities themselves, but, we're human. We've all got interrelated stories that we can share with each other. So where there might be a story around a Muslim community, it will resonate with many other communities and so on. So there's a huge opportunity there, and the mainstream media really needs to step up its game and catch up.
I'm running out of time, and when we planned this interview, we might thought 30 minutes would have been enough, and I've just started. We've got 3 minutes left of the chat. Start to realise that maybe we should have penciled in more. I know you're happy to come back and do this again and add some more questions. But I just wanted to ask you one final question. When you look back at your distinguished life and your career, what have you learned about yourself?
I've learned I'm way more resilient than I ever imagined. I'm tougher than I think I am. And I'm more capable than I think I am. And that is what I would like to share with everybody. And Mohammed, if I could quickly mention,
Please.
I would really welcome your audience, those who want to get into a career in TV, radio, and film, to come and find me on YouTube. Come say hello, be a part of the community, and learn from industry professionals who I've interviewed all the different pathways into this business.
After the break, we'll reflect on September 11th, the Muslim community. We head to New York, the city of that terrorist attack, to reflect with Moustafa Bayoumi. Join us on the other side of these very important messages. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusive here on British Muslim TV.
The different roles that are available, it's really important to know what you want to do before you step into this industry. And also, my guests all give top advice on how others can follow in their footsteps. And I am committed to ensuring that my contributors are, amount to 70 to 90% people from diverse communities and women. So I welcome everybody to come by, swing by, say hello, be a part of the conversation.
Well, I know you promised to come back and tell us and carry on this conversation, and we can do whatever we can because we have lots of people who come and work here because they can't get opportunities in the mainstream media, behind the camera as well as in front of the camera. Thank you so much. You're engaged in some very important work. Thank you so much for joining us, and I salute you. Best wishes to you and the family, and I look forward to welcoming you back.
Thank you, Mohammed. I look forward to it, and your audience and your team members are welcome to come and join me on YouTube and learn something for themselves and educate themselves on what the wider media can afford them.
Yeah, I can't wait to join you in one of those programs. Maybe we could switch roles. Thank you so much. That was broadcaster and journalist Samia Kiyani on BAME Media Representation. Do some really important work. And if you're out there and you're interested in a career in the media, please, we'll tweet out the link to her YouTube channel, but also get in touch. There are opportunities available in the mainstream media, but also in BAME media as well that you might be able to check into. And I was telling you about Sir Keir Starmer. He had made his speech today at the Labour Party conference in Brighton. There was lots of heckling in the room, and I thought he dealt with that quite strongly. It was a 90-minute speech, and it was his first speech delivered to conference. And he said, our politics need to grow to meet the scale of the challenge. Lots of comments coming through about Keir Starmer. And what's really interesting, he asked for unity from the activists. We know that there was lots of heckling in the hall in the Brighton Conference Centre. These were supporters of the previous Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, and those on the left. And he said, these are big issues the country is now facing in the aftermath of this pandemic. And our politics is so small. And he said, our politics needs to grow, as I said before the break, to meet the scale of the challenges. And he said he's not going to stand for the record of knife crime, massive increase of knife crime in our communities. And he talked lots about patriotism. And that was deliberate, because one of the accusations made against Jeremy Corbyn was that he wasn't patriotic enough, whereas Keir Starmer wanted to talk about being patriotic. He spoke lots and lots about his own background, because when you think of establishment, you think of Sir Keir Starmer, a person who was knighted by the Queen for his services to the Crown Prosecution Service. He was the former head of the Crown Prosecution Service. And so people in working communities, working class areas, some of those red wall seats, might not see him as a working class kid. And he went to great length in that speech to talk about the fact that he was a human rights lawyer, standing up for human rights around the world. Some accuse him of getting that in the 21st century and in 2021. And he also talked about his mother, his late mother, and her many years of suffering from the Still's disease. It's a form of inflammatory arthritis And it often restricted her mobility, a sense talking about carers. And he described his parents as both the two rocks of his life. And last year, because of the pandemic, because of the coronavirus, not many of us were interested in what was happening and getting introduced to the new Labour leader. This was his chance to be introduced. This was his opportunity to introduce himself to the nation, to talk about his background, to talk about his lived experience, and talk about the values that brought him into politics and what the country can expect if he's elected as the Prime Minister at the next election. And then he contrasted that, which I thought was a really very good way to do it. He contrasted his own background and his own story with that of the Prime Minister. He called him a trickster, a trivial man, and a showman with nothing left to show. So that was the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, addressing the Labour Party conference. As I said, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson will arrive in Manchester this weekend for the Conservative Party conference. And that speech, the Prime Minister addressing delegates face-to-face for the first time as well. The Conservative conference is more of a hybrid conference, but the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, is expected to address the conference on Wednesday, next Wednesday, and we'll bring you a summary of that in next week's show. Let's move on and talk to you. As you know, September, the month of September, and particularly September the 11th, is the 20th anniversary of those dreadful and evil crimes that we saw in the United States when the World Trade Center in New York, the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and that plane that went down in Sharpsville in Pennsylvania. At the most basic level, it was an attack against all human beings. The terrorists that killed on that day had no regard for human rights or human life. And the world has then since had to witness a neoconservative war agenda that has led to war, violence, killing, drone attacks in different parts of the world. And it is that we want to talk to our next guest about. Moustafa Bayoumi is the author of award-winning books, How Does It Feel to Be a Problem?, Being Young and Arab in America, and This Muslim American Life, Dispatches from the War on Terror. He's a professor of English at Brooklyn College City, University of New York, and is joining us live from that great city of New York on British Muslim TV. Moustafa, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the program. Great to have you on.
Walaikum salam. Thank you very much for having me.
First of all, on that 20th anniversary, you were in this. Where were you when you heard about the attacks on your city, and how do you reflect on that dreadful day?
Well, I was in New York City. I was in Manhattan even. I was on Uptown, just getting ready to start my day like so many people were. And at first, you know, with the TV on, there was a lot of almost disbelief, but that initially that there had been a small plane, that it was initially reported that there had been a small plane flying into the building. But by the time the second plane hit, it became very clear that this was a real political event and that was going to be traumatic for the city and really for the country and the world. It was immediately evident that something world historical was happening. And I was filled with a great deal of sadness, as I think everybody in New York City was. Shock and sadness, but a lot of us were also, especially us Muslims in New York City, were also filled with trepidation, because we were immediately thinking, if this had been, if Muslims were identified as the perpetrators here, then life is going to immediately get worse for so many people.
And that's what happened. There was a massive increase in violence, not just towards Muslims and mosque, but also the Sikh community. The very first person who died was a Sikh man. Tell us about that period, living through that period where there's hostility. Because I did a blog on this, Moustafa, recently on the anniversary of September the 11th. And I remember that my life changed on September the 11th because people started to see me under the prism of my faith, whereas before they didn't. They saw me through the prism of my ethnicity. How was it for you?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. One of the things that I think is important to remember from New York City in particular is that New York City tends to be actually a very liberal leaning city as well. And initially, immediately following the attacks, there was this, as I said, there's a great deal of sadness and mourning that was pervading the city, but also the sense that no other place on earth should really have to undergo this level of violence. And in fact, in the very beginning, there was a strong kind of anti-retribution feeling in New York. And in fact, there were a lot of demonstrations. I remember very clearly the slogans that were found at those demonstrations. One in particular was, "Our grief is not a cry for war." It was a really powerful moment, but that was very quickly eclipsed, unfortunately, with the sort of the groundswell across the country for war. And that was really promulgated when then President George W. Bush came to the site and spoke like a sheriff and had, on his bullhorn and said that they were going to get back, they're going to seek vengeance for this attack. And that was really also marked a lot of the turning point for when the violence really started to escalate in New York City, although it had already been escalating nationwide. And I think you're absolutely right. In fact, I recently wrote an article for The Nation magazine. And one of the things I looked at in that article was the use of the term Muslim American within major media publications. I used one of these databases, the Nexus database, which collects all of the different media and legal outlets from across the country. And if you looked at it from the earliest moment of that database, 1986, until September 10th of 2001, there were something like 437 examples of the usage of the term Muslim American. That's it, 437 over all those years. From September 11th until today, there are more than 10,000. 10,000 is the upper limit of the database. So we went from 400 and something to 10,000 and something. And so that, I think, is exactly to your point, that in fact, people started identifying Muslims through their religion rather than their ethnicity. Muslim American became its own kind of identity, and it became a kind of identity that the government was also using as a way to craft its own laws and its own policies.
Yeah, and then the week later, the president at the time, George W. Bush, was forced to go to the Islamic Center of Washington, D.C. because of violence towards Muslims. He had a State of Union address, emergency State of Union address to Congress, where he talked about Islam being a faith of peace. What did you make of that gesture at the time?
Well, what can I say? The day before, in fact, he also called up the war on terror a crusade, right? So that's also indicative of something, hearkening back to a type of conflict in history that I don't think many people around the world want to be reminded or want to re-enter. But not only that, I think that it's really important to recognize that at the same time that George W. Bush is saying things to the effect of, consider Islam a religion of peace and so on and so on, his administration is going after Muslims throughout the country, denying them all kinds of due process, seeking to get them off the streets for the minorest of infractions or suspicions, and deporting hundreds, if not thousands, of people at the same time. So there was, in fact, a level of government violence that
it was like looked at the prism of security. Don't go anywhere. If you want to ask him a question, please do pick up the phone. We'll get through some of your calls, but we'll be back very shortly. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq. As I said, my special guest is Moustafa Bayoumi. He's still with us live from New York City, exclusively here on British Muslim TV.
Absolutely, absolutely. But they were expressly saying that they will use every element, the most minor of infractions to get people off the streets. They meaning the government itself. So I think it's really important to see when George W. Bush comes and he speaks those words, not that he's a great communicator, but in fact that it's the state saying that we want to have the monopoly on violence here. Maybe we don't want to have a kind of free exchange of violence with vigilantes throughout the country, but the state is going to be in charge of co-opting all of the violence of the state and directing it towards Muslim bodies.
Yeah, and then they created something called the Department of Homeland Security, as well, which was this vehicle that they used to carry out some of those arbitrary arrest and deportations, and there wasn't much scrutiny from Congress.
No, not at all. I mean, there was a lot of lockstep. You know, this is what happens in moments of crisis often. I think it's not unique to the United States, but this is what happened at that moment. I mean, same thing with the USA Patriot Act that was passed. It was a voluminous act that had all far-reaching consequences and was passed really with very few people reading through the whole thing and very little opposition, just as was the case with the authorization for the use of military force, which only Barbara Lee opposed. So yeah, we get that kind of lockstep attitudes with politics, especially in times of crisis, and it's actually enabled the kind of continuation of the war on terror at the expense, really, of all kinds of innocent people, not just in the United States, but really around the world.
Moustafa, as we reflect on the last 20 years, what does it mean to be an American Muslim now in 2021?
Well, I think that it means that we've undergone a great deal of hostility. We've undergone a great deal of curiosity. And I think we've also undergone a great deal of growth as a community, as a national community. You know, Muslim communities in the United States are very complex. They come from at least 77 different nations of origin. They weren't necessarily very unified either before 9/11. And I think there's still some divisions. Obviously, that's natural to happen to any community of this breadth and this number. But nevertheless, I think that there is more growth, more unification, and more recognition of our power as our political power within the country. And so now we have, in fact, important leaders within Congress as well. And I think that level of organization and recognition is something that should also be mentioned.
Yeah, because politicians on the left and the right used the September the 11th attacks to step up the demonization against Islam and Muslims. It was like patriotic to be anti-Islam, wasn't it?
I think it still is, actually. You know, one study from just 2018, which is really just yesterday almost, still had about 1 in 6 Americans said that they should deny Muslims the rights to citizenship in this country. 1 in 6. And that was actually, of course, the numbers were much higher with Republicans, but they were not exclusive to Republicans. There were significant numbers of Democrats who also believed that same thing. So yes, to be anti-Muslim is a way to instrumentalize a kind of bigotry into one's politics. And I think that's a long tradition in American nativism. We're just the latest recipients of it.
Yeah, and then what impact do you think the Afghanistan war, because, you know, as you said, people were feeling very, wanted retribution, wanted justice. We then had the Afghanistan war, then that led into the Iraq war, drone strikes, violence across the world carried out by the US and its allies. What impact did all of that have on American Muslims? Did you feel strong enough to speak out against the injustice of that foreign policy?
I think that Muslim Americans have had a really tough time because not only are they busy speaking out against those foreign policy adventures, or whatever you want to call them, foreign policy fiascos, really, but at the same time, we've also had to deal with all kinds of repression, domestic repression as well. So we've had to grow up politically very quickly. And I think that's actually made a lot of new alliances for Muslim Americans too. You know, Muslim Americans have deep alliances with African American communities, with Asian American communities. We're very involved in peace movements around the world. And so, but yeah, I mean, at this point, we have the war on terror has now expanded to at least 85 countries in the world. The U.S. military footprint is enormous and almost exclusively destructive wherever it's gone. So it's incumbent upon us as Americans to fight against that, but it's also incumbent upon us just as human beings, as it should be for everybody, to fight against that.
And then we have Barack Obama. He comes in, he stands for president. Was he a disappointment?
Yes. What can I say? He spoke very well, but I think actually history will show that the Obama presidency not only played it very, very safe, but in fact, by playing it safe, it was a continuation of an imperial policy with a gentler face.
Because the drone attacks in Pakistan, for example, continued They actually increased under Barack Obama as president than George W. Bush.
In fact, it's been reported that that one of the reasons for that was Obama, the constitutional lawyer, did not want to bring more people to Guantanamo Bay. So rather than the solution, so-called solution then was rather than arrest people or not even arrest, but in fact kidnap people and take them to Guantanamo Bay, maybe drone strikes and death by air would be a more expeditious route, which is absolutely morally horrific.
And then you lived through the Donald Trump presidency. How did you survive that? 4 years.
That was exhausting, let me say. I think
it was exhausting for me as a journalist every week reporting on it. I can imagine having to live under that.
In the very beginning, Donald Trump really instrumentalized Islamophobia in a way that hadn't been instrumentalized before, with the Muslim bans and all of that stuff. Not only with that, though, in fact, if we were talking about George W. Bush earlier as kind of trying to keep the monopoly of violence with the state, what Donald Trump really did was he released the state from that monopoly. And he enabled not just state violence against Muslim Americans, but really vigilante violence too. So we saw hate crimes explode in the early days of the Trump presidency. So they exceeded, in fact, the numbers that they had been at during the immediate months following 9/11. So that was already really a horrific thing to live through. And then what we did see through the rest of the presidency, I think, was not that his anti-Muslim rhetoric or attitudes diminished, not at all. But in fact, they just sort of expanded to every other group that he didn't like at the same time. So, there's a lot of anti-Mexican, anti-Latino, anti-migrant, anti-everything under Donald Trump, anti-Black, and in fact, that opens up opportunities, even more opportunities for organizing, coalition building, recognizing the common struggles that we all have if we want to live on this earth together.
I just wanted to ask you about a really powerful book, This Muslim American Life, Dispatches from the War and Terror. You've been pretty vocal for the last 20 years. Did you get any backlash when you were writing these books and from American?
Oh, all the time. My email address is a compendium of misspelled hatred, I guess you could say. Poor grammar of the Islamophobes is something that one should pay no attention to, but I'm forced to, I suppose.
Yeah. I just promised, sorry, Moustafa, I promised that we'll take some of you some calls. We've got quite a few waiting, so let's take a couple. Let's go to the first line. Assalamu alaikum, you're live on British Muslim TV.
Assalamu alaikum, evening.
Hello, sister.
See, because it's 9/11 that you are talking about, I just want... Sorry, is it myself is meant to speak, yeah?
Yeah, we're listening to you. Go ahead,
yeah,
sister.
I just want to see, because it's 9/11, do you know who causes it? It's Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is an extremist country. They don't give anybody the rights. They don't give women rights. It's part of them that cause terrorism in other countries. Saudi Arabia should be dealt with. And I think they bring Islam in a bad light also. That's what I wanted to say.
Certainly your opinion, I'm sure the state of Saudi Arabia would disagree with that description you have of them, but you are entitled to your viewpoint, but I'm sure if the Saudis were here, they would disagree with that. So you were, sorry, Moustafa, you were talking just there about the sort of Islamophobic abuse. I laugh at it because it's funny. I often get this as well, what is it with Islamophobes around the world? They can't spell in English and they can't get the words right to insult you.
And yet they know things like, the arcania of the faith too, like, taqiyya and things like this that matter, nothing to everyday practice of Islam. And yet they've been turned into a kind of, it's really very similar to a kind of new communism, right? It's though it doesn't matter, or really a kind of it's the new anti-Semitism in a lot of ways too. I remember reading in Hannah Arendt's book years ago, and she talks about how the anti-Semites know the details about certain elements of Judaism in a way to oppose, Jewish people. That reminded me very much of the ways in which Islamophobia operates today too.
And then as you look currently, we had Donald Trump, who wanted to pull out of Afghanistan. now Joe Biden, who's actually done it. What are the consequences for Joe Biden as he made that decision? And we've seen the chaos that's developed in Afghanistan as a result.
Well, I think history will show. Maybe it's too early to tell. It's still relatively early in Joe Biden's presidency, although he has gone down in the polling by polling figures lately because of it. I have a feeling that he'll be able to rebound from it. I think that Afghanistan was a failed prospect from the very beginning, so it might have been a wise and judicious policy, to leave. Although certainly, not only his justification paid very little attention to Afghan dead and Afghan injured. His justification paid a lot of attention just to American lives, for one thing. And of course, there's a great deal of disruption within Afghanistan itself. But the problem was the policy from the very beginning as well. And of course, Afghanistan was never the prize from the U.S. policymakers' point of view. It was always Iraq. So Afghanistan was always a poorly run, ideologically driven fantasy war. And it just shows that Muslim lives and Muslim futures are disposable for the American, this sort of American foreign policy vision. And that has to change. Now, it doesn't have to change to meaning that now Chinese lives are going to be more disposable. What we need is a new kind of...
What we'll do, we'll take a break and we'll go to Bolton in Greater Manchester. It's all about Manchester. And we'll talk to Ayaz Bhuta, the gold medalist. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV. And wow, what a powerful program we've had tonight. I say that every week, I know, but there was something particularly special about today's program. Samia, Moustafa. And we're live from our studios here in Wakefield.
Worlds where global cooperation takes over for the kind of militarism that we are currently enduring.
Final question, sir. What does the future hold for you? I know you do some fantastic columns, which I often read in The Guardian. You're a professor at university. What's the next step in your journey, Moustafa?
I am working on some other projects that I would be not quite ready to share with you yet, but be happy to share with you in the future. I'd be happy to come back on your show.
I'd love to have you on back.
That would be great. And I am very eager to keep my Guardian column going and try to hold people and the people in power to account as best as I can.
Well, thank you so much for blessing us with your presence. Allah keep you safe and love to the family.
Shukran. Thank you very much. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu rahmatullah. That was Moustafa Bayoumi, the Guardian columnist. He's also a professor of English, really talking about and reflecting on his life in the aftermath of September the 11th, 20 years on. Wow. You can imagine where, if you're old enough to live that period on that day, where you were and what happened, you remember every minute detail, don't you, about that moment. And I do remember mine as well, as I shared with you last week. That was a really horrific moment. And as I said, after the break, we're going to have a bit, I know it's a bit of a, serious news story we just completed with Moustafa, but after the break, we'll be talking to a Paralympian gold medalist. I've never in my broadcasting career ever talking to a gold medalist. Somebody who's actually won a gold medal in the Paralympic Games. I'm super, super, super excited. Is it obvious? All of the studio is super, super excited. And as I said, we were reflecting, if you like, on the news story, which the real big news story for those political junkies out there was the Keir Starmer's leadership under threat, but clearly delivered a very good speech in Brighton. Now, the Tokyo Paralympic Games was postponed for a year, supposed to happen last year due to the ongoing COVID pandemic. It went ahead this summer, without any fans in the stadium, as did the Olympic Games. The athletes were so inspirational to everyone. everyone out there in the country and around the world, because despite their disability, they excelled and made the nation proud. Now, Team GB, which is collectively the United Kingdom, 4 nations, Scotland and Wales, England and Northern Ireland, from Team GB. They achieved 124 medals with 41 gold medals. They beat the medal haul in London 2012, the Olympic Games that happened in London. And now one sport which caused a real upset was when Team GB beat the Americans in the wheelchair rugby final. Now, the Americans are a bit like Real Madrid at their peak, or Barcelona, yeah? Creme de la creme, or Lewis Hamilton, or Michael Schumacher. They were the champions, they'd won gold medals, they were expected to win. It was going to be a walk in the park. Ayaz Bhuta is a member of the rugby wheelchair team that won a gold medal. Yes, they won a gold medal and they beat the Americans. We love when British sports people beat the Americans, do we not? Anyway, he's from Bolton in Greater Manchester and has had so many barriers in his own life that he's had to overcome. I'm pleased to say Ayaz Bhuta is joining us live from Bolton, exclusively here on British Muslim TV. Ayaz, welcome to the programme. It's an absolute honour to interview you and have you on, sir.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, many congratulations from all of us here in the studio. How do you feel to being a gold medalist?
Still hasn't sunk in yet, but yeah, it's just amazing. People have been so great, kind, and yeah, just 10 years of hard work really just come to fruition, and yeah, just enjoying the moment now.
Yeah, and because for those who might not know your background, you were at the Rio Paralympics, you came 5th, you lost your funding. That did not deter you. How did you cope at that time when you found that you came 5th? I think I would argue 5th is still fantastic. It's better to be 5th than 10th. But you came 5th, you then lost your funding. How did you cope at that time?
It was a very tough time. We had to do a lot of crowdfunding, a lot of looking for sponsors, and then me looking for personal sponsors, and then I started doing schoolwork just to fund my sport really. So just going to schools, giving inspirational assemblies, and then getting paid for it, and then just working, using that just to fund my sport really. And then we always believed that we were good. We just kept making silly mistakes really, and yeah, it just all came together this year, and thankfully, yeah, all the hard work that we did during the COVID times, and all those Zoom sessions, all those training outside by myself, by ourselves, and doing just weights in the house and things like that, just to keep ourselves fit. And yeah, and something just special happened.
Now, for those of you who might not know, the Paralympics, the Olympics are the Olympics, but the Paralympics are for those who have a disability. And that could be a visible disability, but also a non-visible disability. Just for our viewers' sake, tell us a bit about your disability and how it impacts your everyday life.
So I have Robert's syndrome, which has affected the growth of my limbs. So my legs are short, and also my upper body with my left arm. Let me show you now. I can extend like that with my right arm. Can you see the size difference? Yeah. So I can't really extend it from the elbow. So the joint is fixed at the elbow. So there's no tricep and there's no bicep really. And I can walk a little bit, but I use a wheelchair, and I stand at 3'7", and I'm like just under 7 stone at the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just affects me with height, with walking, with grip, pushing the wheelchair in a straight line because of the mechanics. So I've got to use my shoulders in a different way. But yeah, I have different teammates that have different disabilities. So I've got people with like spinal cord injuries, people that have contracted meningitis and lost their legs, and also cerebral palsy athletes. So there's a wide range of disabilities in my team.
And where did that passion to be in the Paralympic Games come from?
I think from a young age, really. I remember reconnecting with one of my primary school friends, and he said to me, "You always said you were going to be in the Paralympics." I don't actually quite remember that, but I'll take his word for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, just just wanted to do sports. I always wanted to play sports, and I'm lucky I found the opportunity to actually excel at a sport and even find a sport, really, because I started playing wheelchair basketball at a tough time in my life, because I was low on confidence, basically, just because of how my disability was treated in my community, and people were staring at me, stopping at what they're doing, and just really affected me. So I never really went out, and I just used that just as an excuse to stay indoors and eat food and get overweight. And then I started playing wheelchair basketball, and that sort of brought my confidence back. And I always used to smash people in basketball, and when you're not allowed to because it's a non-contact sport. So wheelchair rugby, Scout was watching, and he said, you'd be pretty good at the sport because you have to have a certain type of disability to play. So you have to have, each Paralympic sport has to have you have to have a specific disability.
Yeah, there's certain criteria that you have to meet.
Yeah, so with wheelchair rugby, you have to have a lower body and upper body impairment. And yeah, I played it. I got into the GB team 6 months after taking up the sport, and then I got dropped because they said I was too light for the sport, and they were worried about my health and safety. So that was back in 2010, and then it took me 3 years to make my way back into the GB team, and then on my return, I won the best player in my position.
Yeah, because as you mentioned there, 2010, it was in the run-up to the London 2012 Olympic and Paralympic Games.
Yeah. Having
a home games, you missed out on that. But how much did the fact that the Olympics were in our own country have on you to keep going, to head towards Rio?
Yeah, I mean, I went to watch the London 2012 Games, and it just inspired me. I thought I could be one of these athletes. And then about 6 months after the games ended, I actually got my chance again. So, and I had to take it, really. Otherwise, I think you can't have two chances and fail. So I took my second chance, and yeah, just fantastic. And, I thank Allah, really, like, for giving me the courage to, overcome all these adversities, and just being able to always have this belief in myself, and giving me the opportunities to always make it back and make me a stronger person, basically.
Tell us about the support that you got, that you required from your family as you embarked on this journey to be a Paralympian.
Yeah, I mean, they've been truly supportive. They've always believed in me, and even if we came home and finished fifth, they were still proud of me. But and even though I was like down in the dumps and things like that, they always, what Asians are like with weddings. There's a wedding every weekend, isn't there? So I missed a lot of family functions, and I never once got told off for that. And yeah, they just completely supported me, and all the support they gave me out in Tokyo, even though they couldn't be there with me, was just fantastic, really. And even just my extended family members, all my cousins and uncles and aunties, they all just got behind me, and yeah, it was just amazing. And to become the first Muslim in this country to win a wheelchair rugby medal, I think, yeah, it's an honor, really, and it's something you can just tell from my voice and my reaction, like I still can't believe it. So yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, sometimes you probably think you're going to wake up from the dream, but you are an absolutely amazing guy, and inspired so many people around the world. When you think about your disability, and you think about the services available, the gyms, locale mosques and activities, do you think they were inclusive of your disability?
Yeah, alhamdulillah, I'm pretty able, because I can use my legs and transfer onto seats and things like that. So I don't need that much. I'm pretty independent in a way. So yeah, it was a bit of a struggle finding a local gym that had the correct equipment that I can use and things like that. But I've got a gym in Bolton, which really, they give me a complimentary membership, and they just let me use the gym and all of its facilities for free. So yeah, they've been pretty supportive.
Join us on the other side of these very important messages. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed, Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV. Ayaz Bhuta, the Paralympian gold medalist, is still with us live from Bolton. Let's open the lines now and take some of your calls, 01924231083. Now, before the break, Ayaz, we were discussing the games being postponed. How disappointing were you when you heard that the Paralympics had been postponed? Because this is something which you trained for, you're working towards a target, which is the Paralympics last year, and then they get postponed. What was your reaction?
Yeah, it was just devastating, really. You know, I think I spent the first week of lockdown just like moping around in bed and just thinking, what's the point in training and things like that. But then I just got myself out, got out of the mental headspace that I was in, and just started training. And we had lots of Zoom sessions and a lot of interaction with the team. It's good being in a team sport because you can sort of lean on others and they can lean on you. And whereas individual sports, it probably would have been a bit tougher. But yeah, it was. We thought they would never happen because like we didn't know when COVID was going to go. You know, all that time with the vaccine talk wasn't even around. Like how long going to be locked down for? And you know, we thought because it's on a 4-year cycle, isn't it? Every Paralympics. So like what would happen? Because like if they postponed to next year, then what would happen with the rest of the program? And you know, or would they just cancel it and we just have to go to Paris 2024 and carry on? So there was just lots of uncertainty around that time. But you know, we just kept true to ourselves, just trained, and then just took every challenge as it came. And
yeah, and you kind of kept going.
Yeah.
And not focused about what was happening about when the games are. You just continue your training.
Yeah. Yeah, just keep going and just keep doing your work. And I think that's what helped us, really. I think that extra year just helped us just do a lot more tactical work and a lot more bonding together as a team. And it paid off at the games.
How did you react when your family and friends couldn't join you in Tokyo?
Yeah, I mean, I was planning on, you know, getting everybody tickets and things like that. So it was a bit gutted, really, because you know, they never got to watch me in Rio, and then they were making plans to come to Tokyo. And yeah, I mean, we weren't even sure if fans were even allowed. So, and then the whole COVID situation. So I don't think they would have been comfortable coming anyway. But yeah, it would have been nice to have them. But you know, like I said earlier, they give really great support from back home and very encouraging messages, and you know, just getting behind the team from thousands of miles away. Yeah,
they must have been watching on the screen, and it was a really 8-hour. Tokyo's been 8 hours ahead, and it was kind of deep, but it was something which lots of people did, and you know, it was an amazing moment. I'm sure for your family, a proud moment, but also for the whole country. So, how did you train with your team? Because I'm assuming, you know, wheelchair is a team sport, isn't it? How did you get together with your team when there was the pandemic going on and was restrictions and stuff like that?
Yeah, so we didn't train up until, so I think it was March the lockdown happened, wasn't it, in 2020? And then we didn't get back to training until September, and then we had to do a return to play, so only 4 of us could train together and then 1 week, and then increasingly like 6 of us could train, 8 of us could train, and things like that. And then it was in around December time when we actually started to train together properly as a full 12 inside the sports hall for the first time, which was the first game we played against each other. Like we had like an inter squad friendly, and it was probably the worst rugby that we've ever played because nobody's played for 6-7 months, so it was quite intense. And then you know, just getting back into training camps. So we had a lot of training camps from January up until August, really. And even though everything was starting to open back up, we as a team and individuals couldn't really, you know, meet with our families or friends outside, and we had to be careful. So we were effectively still in lockdown and having to do regular testing and things like that, and just being really, really careful because if we got COVID in the last month before Tokyo, I don't think we'd have been allowed to go. So and we had a couple of guys go down with COVID during the year. So yeah, we just had to really, really be careful and just focus on the big prize, really, and just make lots of sacrifices and not see family or friends. But now I'm back, won the gold. I've done nothing but see family and friends, so it was all worth it.
And what was Tokyo like for you? Because obviously You arrive in the city. It's a beautiful city, but you can't do all the things that you would have normally have done, like you did in Rio, for example.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to do them sort of things because of the pandemic and the restrictions that Tokyo was still living under. How was that experience?
Yeah, so we've actually been to Tokyo quite a lot. So we've done all the sightseeing. We've seen all the Shibuya crossing, the tower. You know, we've been to, you know, all the food places and things like that. So when we got to Tokyo, it wasn't, you know, like we're missing out because we've done it all. So it was just business, really. So we just stayed in the village. I'm not sure if you've heard about an Olympic and Paralympic food hall. It's like a massive warehouse full of the world foods. So you got like Asian section, Japanese, veggie section. There was a halal section as well, which helped me out quite a bit. There's like loads of desserts and pizzas and things like that, which you're not allowed to touch. So everybody, if you imagine, there's like thousands of athletes, and you know, you had to pick the quietest time. You had to stay away from people, and you had to clean the area that you're in before you sat, and clean all your dishes, and you know, wear gloves. So it was quite an experience just going to the food hall. So just make sure you never caught anything.
So let's talk about the Americans. They had a distinguished record in wheelchair rugby. I said at the beginning it was a bit like, you know, a minion team facing Real Madrid or Michael Schumacher or Lewis Hamilton. Did that intimidate you, or did that encourage you to beat them?
Funnily enough, Mohammed, we lost to them in the group stage. So that was a tough pill to swallow. We were actually 6-up in that group stage. So with how the wheelchair rugby works, like you've got 8 teams and you get split up into 2 pools, and you have to play 3 games within those pools. So we actually won the first 2 games against Canada and New Zealand. So we actually through to the semi-final, but we had to play that last group game against USA to get the seedings for the semi-final, and we were actually 6-up, and then we actually just lost the game by 2, which was really devastating. So we had to pick ourselves up for we played the host Japan in the semi-final. We actually beat Japan by 7, I think, and then we faced USA again in the final.
Because you get to the final, you know that you're guaranteed at least a silver medal by just getting to the final.
Yeah,
you're getting to the final game. As you said, you had lost already to the US in the group stages. How were you feeling at that moment? Were you intimidated by the Americans?
Yeah, because they're a really good team, and it's always a close game between GB and USA. So, but they usually come out on top. They don't usually batter us. It's always like 1 or 2 points. So before we went away, we just did our video analysis. We did a big team meeting and looked at all our mistakes that we made in the first game against them that we lost, and you know, just basically cut out those errors and just played the perfect game, really.
And then, how did you react? I know I've seen the video of you cheering and reacting, but the fact you beat the Americans, and then you were a gold medalist. Wow!
Yeah,
describe that moment.
I can't describe it. It's like from 2 minutes left, we knew we'd won because it was like 4-up. So I was already dancing on the bench. So, and then it just realised, it just disbelief, like we've done it. Yeah. Not only, we were just happy to medal, really. And then we've won the gold, and we created history for the first time. Like we've been the first European team to ever medal at the world stage, and then become the first like crop of GB players to win a medal at the Paralympic stage. And for the first time trying, we won gold. So, you know, I was just in awe and disbelief, and just thinking what I was thinking about was just the journey that we've been through. Like I started thinking about my mum. You know, like my mum's never seen me play because she passed away in 2010. So
God bless her.
So may Allah grant her Jannah. I mean, and yeah, you know, when I was being presented with the medal, like she was the only person that was going through my head, and you probably seen footage of me crying when I'm getting my medal. And you know, I was just making lots of dua. Like I was just saying Alhamdulillah. I was just praying, really, and just like all this adversity that we've been through, and you know, Allah made it all sweet. And you know, I always made a dua tahajjud time that you know, if a medal is good for me, then make it happen. And alhamdulillah, he made it happen. So I feel it's my life's mission now to make life better for disabled South Asians, like whether that be in the Muslim community, the Sikh community, the Hindu community, because I know how negative the perceptions are, and I've grown up with those sort of perceptions. You know, people treating you like second-class citizen and not believing you can do anything, and or just acting like you don't even exist sometimes. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping this medal win I can use that for the platform that I've got to just sort of make people believe in our disabled community.
Yeah.
Our Asian community.
And I suppose we're coming towards the end of the program, and I just wanted to ask you two very brief questions. One, what's the reaction been since you've come back from Tokyo?
It's been fantastic, really. Like from the moment that I landed, we had like a big parade. I came home at midnight from Heathrow, which was a 4-hour drive, and I had my neighbours and my family waiting for me.
Wow.
Like giving me a welcome parade, like smoke flares and things like that, and which was really heartwarming. And then I had a surprise party, which didn't end up being a surprise party. Yeah,
you know they're going to make an effort with you. Final question. First of all, can we see that gold medal?
Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
So
here it is. Wow. Looks.
A fun fact: it's actually made from recycled microchips and from laptops and like mobile phones that the Tokyo residents have donated.
Wow.
And it's gold plated.
Wow, it's absolutely amazing. It looks absolutely stunning. You deserve that. What's next? Are you looking forward to Paris in 2024?
Yeah, I'm 32 now. I think I've still got one more Paralympics in me.
Yes.
And we've got European Championships in February where we need to defend our title there. So because we're 3 times current champions there as well.
Thank you so much for joining us, inspiring us. We look forward to welcoming you back in a future show. But from me and everybody here at the studio, congratulations and thank you so much. And Allah keep you safe. From the team behind the scene, from me, Mohammed Shafiq, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you same time next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I hope you have a fantastic week.